Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for your patience. We had a few technical difficulties with our Wi-Fi suddenly going out. We had a bit of a electricity interruption, so thank you so much for your patience with us. We're very excited to have everybody again here at one of our monthly webinars. I'm Marina Stein from SME South Africa. I'm the editor, and today I am joined by Taniku Mklari from PSTM, and we're talking about governance for your SME. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tiniku, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Marina. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for that warm welcome and introduction. I hope you can all hear me. It's quite warm today in my part of Gauteng. I hope you guys are warm as well. But let's get started. I hope you're as excited about this webinar as I am. I'm a lover of governance. So let us get started. I'm just going to share my screen. Marina, confirm if you can see my screen.
I'll let you know. It's still showing it has, there we go. You can continue to put it in slideshow mode. Before you continue, may I just remind everybody to please, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. We will answer them afterwards in the Q&A section. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Marina. Is it visible?
Yes.
All right. Okay, good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the session on governance. Today's session is going to be a practical guide. We won't be going into too much theory. We'll try and see how best to practice this and how we can implement it in our businesses. I think most of us, when we think of governance, we think it's a complex subject, and we think, how do I untangle this big monster? So today we'll just look at some of the practical ways in which you can apply governance within our own businesses. As I said, practical guide. In terms of our agenda today, we'll do a little bit of an intro and an opening. We'll look at governance overall. What is governance? Then we'll look at why governance is critical for SMMEs. We'll do some practical takeaways, and we'll look at some pillars that we can implement from a finance perspective for good governance. Then we'll have a little Q&A at the end of the session. Right. Who is speaking to you? Who are we? All right, so we are PSTM Chartered Accountants. PSTM Chartered Accountants is a firm of auditors and accountants. We are based in Johannesburg, in Fourways. We've been in the industry for about 15 years now. We started in 2010. So we have about 15 years of experience across both the public sector as well as the private sector. We are quite tech-driven. We use a lot of technology in our business, and we're fairly agile. We are very hands-on, and we've got a serious growth mindset. We are members of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, members of the South African Professional Accountants, as well as the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors. That's who we are in a nutshell. And in terms of who's actually speaking, myself, I am Tiniku Mklari. I'm Tiniku Mklari Mahuma. I am a chartered accountant and a registered auditor by profession. I have over 20 years of experience in the accounting as well as the auditing field. I do hold a higher diploma in tax as well. Yes, there was a time I was very passionate about tax. I still am. And I also have a certificate in executive development from Wits Business School. And on the call with me today, I've got my co-founder and co-director. Her name is Putanang Mutselwa, also chartered accountant, and also has over 20 years of experience in the accounting and the auditing profession. Perhaps just to also highlight, both myself and Putanang have served in various governance structures across both the public sector as well as the private sector. We do serve as non-executive directors for certain entities, also serve as audit committee members, social and ethics committee members. So we do have some experience, a fairly deep experience in terms of governance. So I'm very passionate about governance. It is for me the thing that holds an entity together. It's the glue in any organization. Right, let's move on. In terms of what's governance, may I ask you, Marina, to please run a poll for me? So I think for me, before I go into the detail of governance, it would be good to actually hear from the audience in terms of what is the understanding of governance. So if you may just run a poll for me, Marina, in terms of what, in terms of governance. So I just have a little poll just to gauge your understanding or your sense of governance. So my question is, when you hear the word governance, what do you associate it most with? Compliance and regulations, ethics, risk management and controls, um, leadership. What's your sense of governance? Okay, the votes are coming in. I'll just give it a few seconds. Okay, votes are coming through.
Yes, we have all our participants um, participating in the poll. We have some people still joining online as well. So I'm excited to see what everybody says. Shall we give it a minute or so?
Yeah, I can see. We're
Unicorn?
almost there in terms of the participation. I can see. We'll give it a few seconds.
Okay, wonderful. So, why is it important to firstly understand where your level of understanding is about governments before you continue to investigate what your missing points are?
I think it's very important to understand so that we can be able to direct the conversation today. Governance is wide. The scope is very, very wide. So it covers a whole range of things. So it'll be interesting to see currently where everybody is at in terms of their thinking. And if we can see it, and then we can see if we can expand that thinking a little bit more and build on our understanding of governance. But yeah, so I think I've got the answers, Marina. I think we can end the poll now. I've got it on my side. I can see. Thank you very much for participating. All right, this is very interesting, but it is not unexpected. So in terms of the poll results, we do have 69% of you saying compliance and regulation. So what comes to your mind? Nobody thought about ethics and culture. It doesn't come to mind. 20% have thought leadership and decision making, and about 11% focused on risk management and controls. And to an extent, you are fairly correct. You know, governance, when you think of governance, you do think of compliance, you do think of regulations. But I just want to maybe perhaps emphasize a little bit more that, you know, compliance is very critical and is very crucial for governance, but it is not the end all and be all for governance, right? We need to be looking over and above just the compliance, because that can be a tick box exercise. So what governance looks at is more than just the compliance and the regulations. We need to build on. One of the most important things that when you're considering governance is the leadership aspect and the ethical culture, because the person that leads the organization sets the tone for that particular organization. We can have rules and regulations and compliance, but if we haven't got the right people in place to actually lead the organization, it becomes a little bit tricky in terms of how then do we apply these regulations and compliance. So just bear that in mind. So I do agree with you that most of us think of compliance and regulations, but it's beyond that. It's beyond who's actually in charge of organization. What tone are they setting? Where are they taking the organization? Right. Right, let's move on to the next slide. Now, if I move on, in terms of governance itself, from a pure definition of what governance is defined as the process or the institutions and the frameworks by which an entity is directed and controlled, through which decisions are made, and how those decisions are ultimately implemented, and how we allocate resources to achieve particular goals. Right, that's governance in a nutshell, in a high level. But when you look at King 4 in particular, King 4 looks at governance in a little bit different. It says corporate governance is the exercise of ethical and effective leadership. So we're focusing on the ethics and the effectiveness of your leadership. Do we have an effective leadership that can help me to implement my strategy and my goals? It's very, very critical. Have I put systems in place to ensure that I'm able to deliver ethically and effectively? Right, that's governance in a nutshell. When you look at governance overall, it doesn't only apply to large corporates and public sector and SOEs and so forth. I know majority of us, when we think of governance, we think it doesn't apply to me. I am a small entity. I do not need to have all of the systems in place. However, every single organization requires a system with which to make decisions so they can achieve goals. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. So just bear that in mind that it applies to all organizations. You can apply it at a small scale or at a large scale. When you look at King 4 even goes as far as saying you can apply governance proportionally. So what that means is that for a smaller entity, you will look at your size and say, for my size of entity, what is practical? Why would King 4 want you to apply this proportionally? The main reason would be that every organization is very different. And number one, we all have limited resources. So you can't apply a wide range of governance if you haven't got all the means to actually apply that. So you'll be looking at your resources, you look at your size and look at the practicality. Is it actually practical? Can I go ahead and apply all of these principles? Or what should I do for my size? And also the complexity. How complex is my entity? Do you need a board? If I don't need a board and I'm a one-man show, what best practices can I then apply for my own entity? That's what governance is all about. So you look at your own entity and say, for my size and my complexity, what do I need to be putting in place? Right. Okay, moving on to these headlines. I'm sure all of us have seen these headlines. One time or another, this is what we wake up to in South Africa. We've become accustomed to some of these headlines. We've seen them. I'm not going to go through all of them. What I am going to do is just focus a little bit on, maybe I'll read the Daily Maverick because I think it summarizes all these headlines in a way. The Daily Maverick says, poor policies, and I'm reading at the bottom left of the screen. Poor policies and bad governance are everywhere, from electricity and logistics to local government and deteriorating confidence in mining policies, fast catastrophic levels of corruption to unsustainable levels of public spending and debt, and failure to deal with criminality. So for me, that article, that statement rather, encompasses everything that we're seeing here. It is everywhere. It is not just in the public sector or the private sector. This is all combined. And it also is not, it doesn't also, it's also very true also for the SMMEs. If we do not put the right structures in place, we can also find ourselves in some of these situations. The difference is, yes, we're not public entities. We don't have a public interest score, so no one is particularly interested in us, but we are interested in ourselves. We are vested in ourselves. We've got employees that are reliant on these entities that we are running. So it's very important for us to actually ensure we do have some good corporate governance. Now, if you remember anything from this webinar, just remember these 4 things. This is the essence of corporate governance. There are 4 dimensions to corporate governance. It's who makes the decisions, who, what, when, and how. Very, very important. Who needs to do what? By when must it be done? And how must it be done? This is the essence, this is the crux of governance. If you can master this for your entity, you mastered governance. Because governance is a system, it's a process, it's the practices that you must put in place. I'll go into a little bit of detail now in terms of the who. Now, when it comes to the who, these are the role players in governance. Very, very important. Every single person in the organization plays a particular role. It is important that those roles are clearly defined. We must define the roles that every single person plays. If a person is an owner, they play the role of an owner. Sometimes in a small business like the many that we all manage, you could be the owner and the shareholder. You could be the CEO. You could be the manager as well. But it's very important for you to understand that each and every single one of those roles has got different responsibilities, right? So you must be able to distinguish and say, now I'm a shareholder, I've got certain responsibilities. Now I'm a director, I've got certain responsibilities. As a manager, I must manage. As a manager, I must implement certain things. So the critical thing is identifying who the key role players are in your organization. Once you have identified them, allocate specific roles and responsibilities for them. The key thing is allocating accountability and responsibility. Who is accountable for what? I'll give an example. You as a business owner, if your CIPC annual returns have not been filed, the CIPC is not going to contact your accountant or administrator to say we are deregistering the entity. They will contact you as a shareholder, as a director, to say, we are deregistering you. So you are ultimately accountable. It doesn't matter who does what. We'll come back to the other systems, but the who is very, very important. As an owner, you are the ultimate person who's accountable. When you come down now and you are the director, or you are the CEO, or you are part of that level of giving direction, you set the tone for the business. You set the tone for governance in your entity. What sort of tone are you setting? Because many times people will say, do as I say, not as I do. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in business. People do as you do. So it's important when you're the director, what do you do? What tone are you setting at the top? So just mind yourself and watch yourself there. In terms of the management and your staff and your management, they implement your governance practices. You can sit and say, we want to be an ethical entity, this is how we're going to do it. But the day-to-day are your management and your staff. They're involved. Ensure that you communicate this role to them to say, this is where we are going. This is the role that you're going to be playing in this structure. Your stakeholders, your customers, your funders, your suppliers, your regulators, these are the people that help you in enforcing governance. They hold you accountable. They keep you accountable. They hold you accountable. They've got a role to play. So mind them as well, because they are part of the larger ecosystem of your governance structure. When you look at your external advisors, some of us may have external advisors, others maybe not. Perhaps your business is not big enough for you to actually have an external advisor. But ultimately, when you do get there, if you do get there, those also assist you in providing insight. So it's important for you to look at your own business, analyze it, and identify what sort of role players do I need to assist me to achieve the goals that I have set for my own business. Identify them and allocate the responsibilities to them. The critical thing that you must look for when you are looking at these people, the who, you must look at people that can be held accountable. Are they people of high ethical standards? Do they have integrity? Are they competent? Can they do what needs to be done? Those are things that you look at when you're looking at the who. Right. So clearly define your who, and over and above that, ensure that they are competent, they can do, they've got the means they can do, and they have high ethical standards as well. And people that are able to communicate and are transparent in the communication, very, very important. So just to emphasize there, please clarify the roles, who's responsible for what, so that there is accountability at each and every single level, even to the lowest level in the entity. Everybody is responsible and accountable. When you're looking at the what, remember I said the what. The what is important because this is what we are doing as a business. Where are we going? What are we doing? As the board, we've now clarified our roles. You are the board, you are the shareholder, you are the owner, you are the manager, you are the executor of these roles. We've clarified our roles. The issue is, what are we doing now? The board will set the strategy. The owner, whoever that level is, the highest level, will set the strategy and the performance targets. We are going to achieve the following. So we are going to say we are going to go into a particular sector. For example, this year, we are going to achieve X amount in sales or X amount in revenue. We put it there, and those are our targets. We are going to minimize the following risks in the business. That is set by the owner or the shareholders or the directors. They say, we are going in this particular direction. It's very important. The what needs to be communicated. It needs to be documented as well. Right. In terms of risk and opportunity needs to be managed. In every single business, you are going to get risks. You are going to have opportunities. Every opportunity comes with some level of risk. So it's very, very important that as a business owner, you know that over and above setting a strategy, over and above setting performance targets, I need to manage my risk as well as my opportunities. Very, very critical. You need to identify key risks. So these are risks that are applicable to your organization, including even external risks that will impact you with or without you doing much. You need to be able to see those and manage them, assess them, manage them. But very, very important is that we need to get every single level of employee in the business involved in risk management. Ultimately, yes, the directors are responsible, they are accountable, but every single person manages risk. Let's take, for example, we've got a physical office. You've got an office manager who must manage the office. They must ensure that no unauthorized person enters that particular building. When we all leave at night or in the evening, nobody must be able to come through. If there's an alarm, the alarm must be set. They need to say, if I'm not physically there, I need to either inform the receptionist or inform the staff to say, whoever leaves last, you must follow the following processes. That's part of risk management. When you think of risk management, again, we try and make it very, very complex. It is not complex. It's about what are my risks in my business and how do I best manage them? Again, important, you document these things. When you have meetings, you engage with your staff in meetings, you engage and you talk about the risks. Same thing with opportunities. Opportunities will not always be identified by the shareholders and the directors. Not always. The staff, the management, they're involved in the day-to-day operations. They identify the risks, they see the opportunities. It's critical to engage with your staff and your management to understand where are we as a business? What are our risks? What are our opportunities? And what can we focus on? Yes, we can focus on the top risks. Every business has got the top risks. We've got cash flow risks. We've got declining sales risks. Those are high-level risks that we can all probably identify with. But there are also specific risks that are only applicable to your industry and your entity. So please identify those. That's very, very important. Ethics and culture. I spoke about it a bit earlier to say ethics and culture is the glue to any entity. If you want to have a functional entity, create an ethical culture. Create a culture of accountability where people know that this is how we do things. And if you don't do things like this, these are the repercussions. This is the implications of not doing things the way that we ought to do them. I'm not saying create a culture where people are scared. Create an open culture where we speak about ethics, we speak about doing things right, we speak about what we would like to achieve as an entity, because these kind of things are the things that build our reputation. You've got an ethical culture, you've got a culture of accountability, it builds your reputation as a business. So embed those cultures, those values within the operations of the entity. Compliance, critical, critical, critical. We cannot avoid compliance. Every single business can fail just on compliance. If you fail compliance, you don't have a business, right? So we need to ensure that we prioritize compliance. We need to ensure that we have documented what the rules are that we need to apply to adhere to our laws and regulations. We have the primary laws and regulations that everybody must adhere to, but what are the ones that drive our business? What are those laws? We need to clearly define them, clearly write them and say, this is our make or break. If we don't adhere to these laws and regulations, it could actually cripple our business. Right, and the last part that you need to look at when you're looking at the what is sustainability. It's very, very important that every business is sustainable. We don't want to be running a business for 6 months or a year or 2 years and then shut down. The whole point of creating a business, yes, is to create value for your shareholders. Yes, is to probably close a gap or a need that exists in the market. But you also want to be sustainable, right? So it's important that you consider the long-term value. Succession planning. What happens if Martha is not available tomorrow? Can the work still continue? Will I still be able to deliver? These are things that you must sit down and debate and discuss as an entity, right? So look at your what. What is important to you? What drives the strategy? What are your risks? What are your opportunities? What ethics and culture should you be looking at? What compliance should you be looking at? And sustainability. So SMMEs must govern. You must govern. That is your rule. That's governance. This is actually governance. The what, the strategy, the risk, the ethics, compliance. That's what we do as entities, right? Then if I move on to the when. We've now touched on the who and the what. When. The when is very, very critical. The when determines when things must be done. It does not matter how perfect you've done something. If you have missed the timeline, it serves no value. So timelines are very, very important. When do you do something? It must be clearly communicated and again, documented in your business. Looking at, we can start off with compliance deadlines. Those are non-negotiables. You cannot miss a deadline. It's going to have repercussions for your business. So you need to ensure that you've prioritized those deadlines, you know when it's going to be done, and you've clearly documented it and you adhere to those timelines. Very, very critical, very, very important. So that's very important that we prioritize the when. In terms of your meetings, every business is different. Some businesses might be fine with a meeting once a quarter. Some might be fine with weekly and others monthly. So you need to look at the size of your business and say, how often should I be having meetings with my team? With my funders, if you've got funders, with my investors, if I've got investors, how many times should I be meeting with them? How often should I be engaging with them? That's up to you, but you must actually determine your own cycle. It is very, very important. It must be structured, it must be regular. In terms of business reporting, again, I've said business reporting there because you are reporting overall on your business. You must have reports for every cycle in your business. You must have reports relating to HR. When are HR reports meant to be provided? Have those reports ready. My IT reports, my marketing reports. How often should I be getting this? My management accounts, should they be quarterly? Should they be monthly? Do I need to be preparing financial statements? And if so, when and by when? When and yeah, agree on the timeline. So very, very important to say I've identified all of my key cycles in the business and I'm doing the reporting and I've prioritized the timing. In terms of the risk reviews, your risks, you can decide how often you need to review the risks, but at least annually, minimum, semi-annually. But for us smaller businesses, these are things that we look at on a regular basis, right? So perhaps make it part of your staff meetings. If you're meeting monthly, look at what risks have emerged. What do we need to manage as a business? I've touched on compliance deadlines. I won't go back into that. Stakeholder engagement, very, very important. Your stakeholders, it's not just funders, it's your employees, it's your customers, it's everybody. How often should you be engaging with them? They are part of your ecosystem, so you need to ensure that you're also looking after them. The timing is very, very important. Just ensure that you do this governance on a regular basis. It is structured, it's on a regular basis. It is not a once-off exercise. Very, very important. Now, when you look at the system, how do we go about implementing this? We know who's going to do it. We know what needs to be done. We know by when it needs to be done. The how is very, very important. Quick example. If I have asked my sales and marketing team, you need to market our product, we need to make the sales. The marketing team is marketing aggressively. Our sales team is going out there, it's got the product, it's selling it. Have I equipped them with the right tools for them to be able to make that sale, to convert those sales? Right, so we need to look at, do we have the right systems in place? Do we know how decisions are supposed to be made? Do we know who can sell what? Do we know who can authorize what? These things need to be documented. So the what is clear, the how part of the process, it's the systems, it's the processes, it's the practices. So we must document who can authorize purchases of 10,000, who can authorize 500,000, who can authorize 1,000,000. It must be clearly documented. Who can decide that we are moving today from this building? Who can decide we're buying a new asset? Who can decide we're disposing of that particular division, for example, or we're changing? Who? It needs to be documented to say, this is how we make decisions. It needs to be clear, it needs to be transparent. Policies and procedures, very, very clear. You must document. This is how we do things. This is how we make payments, how we make purchases, how we hire people, how we consider sales, how we identify our sales targets, and so forth. Document those particular areas. Monitoring and evaluation, very, very important. We need to be able to measure ourselves. So do we have the systems in place to say, okay, fine, this is how we're performing. Those also need to be put in place. Transparency and reporting, very, very important. We should be able to provide accurate, accessible reports. Funders, regulators, and all stakeholders, including ourselves. We must report also to our staff and our employees, ensure that we engage with them on a regular basis. Continuous improvement, very, very important. The world is fast changing, right? Today we have this, in two years' time, whatever we may have may no longer be relevant. So it's important that you adapt to the changes that are happening around you. Train the staff if you need to. Train yourself if you need to. Adapt to growth. That's what we need. So ensure we've got the right systems in place to ensure that we're able to move on to the next part. Now, governance is very, very practical. So the how is how we do things, how we implement things, the practical side of things. So let's ensure that we have the systems in place to enable us to deliver practically and embed this in our day-to-day operations. Now, we've covered the core of governance. We know what governance is. Let's do a little poll. Marina, are you ready with the poll?
Absolutely.
Right. The poll should be appearing, and the poll says, what do you think drives a stronger governance in SMMEs? Marina, we've got a different poll. It's okay, we can take this one. I'll go with this one. We'll do the other one last, not a problem.
Thank you.
No, it's fine. Let's do this one. It's all right. It's all linked in any case. What do you see as the biggest benefit of governance in SMMEs? All right, I see the votes are coming through. Just give it a few seconds. Votes are coming through.
So, Tanika, if I can sum up with an analogy what we've just discussed, would it be fair to say that a business is almost comparable to a municipality where a mayor needs to govern the city he's in charge for, create the policies, make sure that there's reporting on policies, that everything's followed, making sure that when there's issues with service delivery, it gets addressed. Is that an accurate analogy?
It is, Marina. It's very much a perfect analogy. The only difference is that our structures will be different, but in terms of what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, it's very much similar. Only we will all adapt it to our own individual companies and entities, but it's pretty much the same. It's very much the same. Hence, even the King report says apply proportionally. So look at what's applicable to you and apply that, adopt that. If it's not practical, you don't have to adopt it. So it's best practice. That's what we're basically aiming for here, best practice ultimately.
Cool. So,
Marina, I think
yes, I think we can maybe end the poll. I don't see any other participation coming in. So I'm
all
ending
right.
the poll.
Okay.
And we have the
All right.
results.
All right. The poll is what do you see as the biggest benefit of governance in SMMEs? And majority of the vote of the delegates, 59%, have indicated it builds trust with funders, customers or employees, so basically our stakeholders, and followed by it protects against fraud and mismanagement, and then enhances reputation and brand equity and improves access to growth and funding. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is the trust. That's what we are aiming for. Once you lose the trust as a business, you doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter what you're selling. We don't trust you. We won't be buying it. It's almost as good as you've killed the business. So the whole point of good governance is to build that reputation, yes, but it builds the trust with your stakeholders, with your customers, as well as your employees. Every employee would love to work for a reputable entity. Nobody wants to work for an entity that is known for not being ethical, because you are, by association, you'll be seen as somebody who's not ethical. So it's very, very important. Thank you for participating. So I truly agree with your sentiments there. In terms of the next slide or the next section, now that we know what governance is, and you've pretty much identified why governance is important. Governance is important. But I want to also highlight something else, right? So when you look at SMMEs, we are all operating SMMEs, but we play a very crucial role in the business, in the economy overall. When you look at SMMEs contribute a whole lot to the South African economy. Just 30 to 40% of South Africa's GDP is coming from SMMEs. It's coming from people that are on this call. We are contributing to the GDP of South Africa. So imagine if we strengthen our governance, our internal controls, manage our risks, how much more we can continue to sustain and contribute to the economy of South Africa. In terms of the jobs, 60% of the employment in South Africa comes from the SMME sector. It's quite big. it's quite big. So we play a very vital role. So it's important for us to create businesses that are sustainable because we are creating jobs, we are creating employment. So sustainability is very, very crucial. Let's ensure that we put together these good governance practices so that we're able to continue to assist in this employment in South Africa. It's vital for local economic development and it's a key driver for economic expansion. We've all heard, the government has often said, government doesn't have funds to expend, doesn't have funds to do this. Yes, it must create an enabling environment, but we also have a role to play as SMMEs to ensure that we are growing the economy. So let us continue doing that as SMMEs. In terms of why governance is critical, you're all spot on. You've all said it builds trust with banks, with your stakeholders. That's very, very important. Yes, it does protect against fraud and mismanagement. It's true, because if you haven't got controls in place, it's very easy for you to have mismanagement and fraud. And I think if you look at majority of the scandals that we have, there is a level of fraud and mismanagement. And oftentimes when you look at fraud, fraud is intentional. It's the intentional stealing or the intentional defrauding or the intentional lying to somebody. It's intentional. Fraud is very intentional. So it goes back again to ethics to say, have I got the right people in place? So you cannot have good governance without embedding an ethical culture. Just bear that in mind to say ethics are very, very important. Ethics for yourself, ethics for your organization as well. Very, very crucial, right? But governance, again, it enables growth and funding readiness. Imagine you've got a big contract, the bank says to you, let us see your accounts, give us your policies, let's have a look. Once they're there, when they're there, it's easy for the bank to analyze and say, fine, your numbers have told us a story, your policies, we can see they're coming through here, we can see your strategy, we can see your business model, it's perfect. When those are not there, it's very difficult for anybody to assess what are they assessing against. Right, that's a critical part of ensuring governance is there. So basically having the systems in place, having everything in place. Poor governance will result in missed opportunities, right? Which is quite, it's self-explanatory. If I haven't got the documents that I'm being asked to provide, nobody can assess. Builds reputation and brand equity, very true. But most importantly, I think we undermine this. And people always say, my biggest assets are my employees. It is very true. Governance enhances employee trust. When you are able to engage openly with your staff and you say what you mean and do exactly what you say, it does enhance that trust between yourself and the employees, right? So leadership, it does enhance that trust in leadership. You set a tone at the top and that tone is filtered down throughout the organization. And ultimately, it leads to effective organizational and business planning. That's it in a nutshell. From a practical perspective, I think we've touched on a little bit of some of these practicalities, but I'll touch high level again on them. Practical governance practices for SMMEs. So when you look at SMMEs, I won't do the poll, I'll just go straight into the practical steps. When you look at the practical steps for SMMEs, very, very important, we spoke about it. We said, when you're looking at the who, we know who they are, but can we clarify their roles and allocate responsibilities? This is the person, this is what they're responsible for. Establish simple governance structures. Majority of SMMEs they've got almost like a flat structure. But even if it's a flat structure or horizontal structure, even if it is flat, ensure that each and every single person in that flat structure knows what they're responsible for. You can still keep it simple, but make sure every single person has got their responsibilities. And if you can, wherever you can, wherever it's practical, apply King 4 proportionally. Take what's applicable to you, apply that. If it's not applicable to you, don't apply. Financial discipline, very, very important. Do not mismanage your funds. Ensure that you are able to budget properly. Ensure that you're spending against the budget. You do not take unnecessary risks, funding risks. Manage those risks. Which leads me to the next point, managing risks earlier. Right, so we need to identify our risks in those meetings that we're having with our staff, with our stakeholders. What are my risks? What are my opportunities? Let's manage them early enough. Transparency and reporting, very, very important. As I've said earlier, we need to be reporting on time. Compliance and ethics, I've said, ethics is the glue of the organization. Ethical culture is the glue. Compliance is critical because this is what we need to be complying with to deliver on our mandate. So it's very, very important for us to ensure we have that. Practical steps for SMMEs continued, build capacity, very, very important. That example of the sales team earlier on, do they have the necessary capacity? Do they have enough manpower? Do they have the systems? Do they have the tools? Very, very important. Technology and record keeping, we cannot ignore technology. We're in a world where technology is driving everything at this stage. So we must be able to ensure that we are using technology wisely in our business as best as we can. And we must always plan for sustainability. Building a culture of accountability, very, very important. And if we don't know how to do something, very easy, let's engage the experts. It's critical to engage the experts, right? Now, the last part of my presentation I'm going to go into is the 3 finance pillars for good governance. I'll speak about finance because I'm an accountant, as I've mentioned earlier. So finance is my area of expertise, right? So there are 3 areas that I believe every business, if we just focus on those 3 areas, we would be able to achieve good governance from a finance perspective. Remember, there's many aspects of your business. There's you've got your ops, you've got your marketing, you've got your IT, you've got your HR, and every single part of that of your business needs to have good pillars. You need to identify what are my pillars that are actually going to assist me in achieving or driving whatever the goals are for that particular area. So for now, we're just focusing on finance pillars, but remember there's other pillars as well, right? Looking at the 3 pillars, there's 3 pillars in finance. So these are the pillars that I say that we're saying if you can master this, you've mastered, you will have good good governance from a finance perspective. The three pillars are: 1, know your numbers. Number 2, manage your cash flows and creditors. Number 3, stay compliant. What do we mean by know your numbers? Knowing your numbers means you need to be able to have a record of your numbers. You need to have your management accounts, your financial statements that tell you, I've made so much in sales. I've made so much in revenue. I've made so much in profit. I've made so much as a loss. These are my expenses. These are my monthly costs. This is how much I'm making per product. You need to be able to get to those numbers as well. Know the numbers. So see the numbers, but know the numbers in detail because the numbers tell you a story. The numbers is your strategy and your performance reported basically. They're reporting your strategy and your performance. If we say we're going to be hiring 50 people, but I can see I've got savings. Why do I have savings? So that's something that you need to manage. Know your numbers, very, very important. Analyze your numbers. Managing your cash flow, very, very important. You must manage your cash flow and your creditors. When you say manage the cash flow and the creditors, it's not only about looking at the numbers, it's about engaging with your creditors. If you're unable to settle liabilities, engage with them on time because they can make or break you, remember. So if you explain to them, this is my situation, this is what we can look at, they might even be willing to enter into a payment arrangement. So be open to having those conversations with the creditors and managing your cash flow wisely. Financial discipline is very, very important. Staying compliant. We've spoken about this many times throughout the presentation. Again, very, very crucial. You must stay compliant. It can make or break your business. So in summary, I'm now at the end of my presentation, but in summary, just quick recap. Governance, who, what, when, and how. Just remember that. Strong governance will build trust. It's going to ensure that you are able to access funding and you're sustainable. You need to identify your business pillars. I've touched on finance pillars, but you must identify your business pillars. You know your business cycles better than anyone, right? We're all doing governance on some extent. To some extent, we're all doing governance. If you haven't started, start small. Continue on that. Be consistent and work on building a trust. You will realize that governance is not the monster that we all think it is. Now, this is who we are again, PSTM. So we, as I've said, governance is part and parcel of what we do. We do have fully outsourced finance functions. We assist you with tax compliance and advisory, internal controls and governance, monthly financial health check-ins, and also do wealth management. In terms of our contact, you can get the information there. You can take a screenshot of the QR code. You can scan the QR code. You should be able to get to our website, and you can get in touch with us. Our information is there. As I've mentioned, we are in Pine Slopes, Johannesburg, and we are PSTM. Thank you very much for listening to me. We are now at the end of our presentation, and it's time for questions and answers. Marina, over to you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was very insightful. I see our chat is sharing a lot of wonderful reactions. Thank you so much. I think one of our first questions here is when you compare a smaller business, like maybe like a micro enterprise where it's either just me and me alone running the business versus a bigger enterprise such as a medium enterprise, is there any difference in the approach to the governance of the two different types of businesses?
Yes, there would be a difference in approach. Implementation and approach would be different, but the essence in terms of the fundamentals remain the same. You will still identify who does what, when, and how. If you're a micro enterprise and you're on your own, you might be looking at, I'm just a one-man show. So you might consider, do I need to get a business coach? Do I need to get maybe an external person to review my business model or review my business plan? Do I need to get an accountant to assist me in compiling my financials? Do I need an HR person? So you will see what you will require for your business. So it will never be the same. Governance will never be the same from one entity to another. We can be two accounting firms, and I can tell you both of us will have different governance structures simply because our operations are different, because your governance is determined by your operations. What am I doing will determine who must do it, how they do it, and when they do it.
So while we are still waiting for some more questions to come in, can you elaborate a little bit more on how the different types of industries, like you just mentioned, what you do will determine what kind of elements of governance you need to look at within your business? Can you please elaborate on that a little bit?
All right, so your starting point would always be compliance. So when you're looking at governance, you always look at what are my laws and regulations that I need to comply with. That's your starting point, because we all have basic laws, for example, that we must comply with. So those basic laws are applicable to all of us. CIPC, tax, labor laws, triple BE, those are basic laws. Health and safety, those are basic laws that every single entity must adhere to, right? Including the labor laws. I think I've mentioned them as well. So you start off there. I must adhere with these ones because I've got a business. The minute you open up a business or register a business with CIPC, you attract certain responsibilities immediately. So identify what those are. Then from there, you go into industry specific. What is it that I need to adhere to in my industry that regulates me as an enterprise that I cannot afford to miss? Once you get to that point, then you are able to identify further, to say, I need to do the following, list them. Once you've listed them, you're able to manage them and monitor them on a monthly basis or on a regular basis rather. So identify primary laws and then industry specific laws. Once you've got those, that's a foundation. You start there. Once you've got those, then you build on that. And when you are looking at policies I think we often complicate it. You don't have to have all of this many policies in place. For example, you start off with your HR when you're employing a person. Your employment contract can cover ethics. It can cover the culture, how we do things. It can cover when we pay you, how we pay you. The sort of things that slowly, surely, we are communicating how we do things. It can cover how you how would we measuring your performance. Slowly, bit by bit, it tells you how things are going to be done. But I've also got my colleague here. I don't know if she wants to add anything into what I've said. Tanang, anything else from your side you want to add on? Okay, but it's fine. Marina, I can just come back to you.
I was
anytime.
struggling to unmute, sorry. Um, Hi everyone. I think the most important thing, I can't share my video, that's fine. That I think for me, the most important thing is really just to remember that who, what, when and how, right? That really is the cornerstone of governance. I know that sometimes we think governance, and I know the example also that was made earlier regarding municipalities. So if you're in municipality, there's a whole lot more governance processes and procedures that take place at that level. But if you think about it, really, a municipality exists to do service delivery for its residents, right? That's the right word. Now, what do you exist for as a business? Obviously, most of us go into business so that we can make money, at the very least to pay our bills, right? Now, what governance allows you to do is to place systems and processes in place to be able to meet that objective. You don't have to be an expert. As Dinyeko said, you can get a coach. You can get an accountant like us. You can get an HR practitioner. There's a lot of things that you can outsource. And sometimes it's also important to just get that sounding board, that person from outside who's going to say, you haven't considered this. You haven't thought about this. This thing is affecting your business. So I think those are really key things that we'd like you guys to take away from the webinar today.
Thank you so much. Ladies, I think that was fabulously insightful. We can maybe take one more question if anybody in the chat has a question. But I think what's very valuable from this webinar and what we can definitely walk away with is we now have a starting point where previously, if we may have had a situation as a business where we are thinking, oh my goodness, where do I start? I don't know where to start, but I know this is important. Looking at like the primary laws of compliance and then going to the industry laws and really working from there and not being shy to reach out to whether it's a business coach or a company like yourself to really say, listen, I don't know what I don't know. Please help me. Um, so that's very important.
That's very
Okay.
true. Very true, Marina.
I see we don't have any more questions. Ladies, thank you so, so much for joining us today. That was fabulous. Everybody, you know where to find PSTM on their website and all of their details should you need it. Thank you once again for a wonderful webinar and joining us and always supporting us as SME South Africa. You can follow us on all the major social media platforms. Go show some love for our webinar on YouTube and everywhere where you see it pop up. And we will see everybody again shortly in our next monthly webinar. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
ladies.
everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Marina. Thank you, everyone, for staying
Thanks.
on.
Bye.
Bye-bye.